Kamala Harris stood by the massive glass doors of the courthouse, clutching her dark blue blazer in her hands. Her fingers nervously touched the small silver cross on the thin chain. She took a deep breath, trying to calm the heartbeat that pounded in her ears. Inside the courtroom, it was cool. The tall windows let in the dim light of the morning sun, casting long shadows on the polished marble floor. Kamala scanned the room. The rows of wooden benches were almost full. People exchanged glances, some whispered, while others stared directly at her. "Kamala Harris?" came the low voice of the judge. She raised her head and took a step forward. The judge was a man in his 50s, with graying temples and a cold gaze. His black robe hung in heavy folds, creating a sense of weight that pressed down on the air in the room. "Please remove the cross." The judge pushed his glasses to the tip of his nose and glanced at her over the rims. Kamala felt all eyes in the room turn toward her. She slowly touched the cross with her fingers, but made no move to take it off. "Excuse me." Her voice was calm, but there was a steel edge to it. "In our court, it is forbidden to wear religious symbols during proceedings," the judge explained quietly but firmly. Kamala felt her heart race in her chest. Her eyes met the judge's, cold, expressionless, like stone. She knew that now she had to choose, to comply or stand her ground. "Your Honor," she inhaled deeply and took a step closer to the podium. "I respect the rules of the court, but this cross is part of my identity. I cannot take it off any more than I can renounce a part of myself." The room grew even quieter. Someone coughed from a distant corner. The judge slowly raised his eyebrows. "This rule applies to everyone, Ms. Harris." His voice became colder. Kamala ran her finger along the edge of the cross, as if drawing strength from it. She could feel the weight of everyone's gaze on her, the tension in the air. If a rule violates basic human rights, can it really be just? Her voice was quiet, but clear. The judge frowned. A tense silence hung in the air. Kamala could hear her own breathing and the soft tapping of heels on the marble floor, someone nervously crossing the room. "I ask you to remove the cross," the judge repeated. Kamala stood her ground. Her fingers remained calmly on the cross. "Sorry, Your Honor, but I won't do it." Her voice did not tremble. A faint whisper spread through the room. Kamala saw a woman in the front row nodding at her, a slight smile of support appearing at the corners of her lips. The judge stared at Kamala for a moment, then slowly removed his glasses. "Very well, Ms. Harris." He sharply closed the case. "The session is adjourned." Kamala breathed in, feeling a wave of relief wash over her. But she knew it wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of the fight. The courtroom had fallen silent. The eyes of everyone present were fixed on Kamala Harris, who stood before the judge, her face displaying firmness and resolve. She once again tightened her fingers around the cross she had been forced to remove at the judge's order, and a fire of stubbornness lit up in her eyes. The judge, a middle-aged man with a face that seemed as cold and stone-like as his demeanor, looked at her with the expression of someone who had long since lost any hope of changing the situation. He raised an eyebrow and addressed her again. "Kamala Harris, this is the court's decision. The cross you wear may be a reason preventing you from performing your duties objectively. You must remove it now." Kamala didn't blink. She felt her heart beat harder in her chest, but her voice remained steady. "Your Honor, I respect your position, but this cross is part of my identity. It's not just a symbol of faith. It's a symbol of my beliefs, my past, and who I am. I cannot remove it." The judge frowned and turned back to his notes, preparing to issue another directive. "Kamala, we are not discussing religious beliefs, but your ability to act without bias in the judicial process. This is important for all parties involved." Kamala slightly shook her head, remaining calm. "I hear you, but once again, your order does not take into account the importance of my rights as a human being, not just a judge. My religion and beliefs should not be in question." I cannot remove this, because it is not just a symbol. It's my duty to my faith, to those who are waiting for justice." The whole room had now begun to watch their exchange with tension. The judge raised his hand, signaling for silence, but his voice was becoming stricter. "You cannot let personal beliefs interfere with the administration of justice. This is not just your personal matter. It's the matter of the entire system. And if you do not comply with the order, I will be forced to take serious action." Kamala felt her heart race even faster. Her stubbornness did not contradict her firm convictions, but a shadow of disappointment crossed her face. She paused before responding. "Justice to me means not only serving the law, but serving the people with dignity and honor. Can we truly expect that this court, that these rules, will serve those who seek help if we cannot understand each other?" The judge shot her a sharp look, but it didn't stop Kamala. She looked at him firmly, with clarity that reflected her internal struggle. "I stand by my decision," she added, disregarding the objections she expected from him. The judge pressed his lips together and walked around the table, his face reddening with anger. He took a few steps and turned sharply toward Kamala. "Your stubbornness endangers the entire system. Do you want me to put you in a situation where this court will have no authority? You have no right to place your personal matters above the public interest." Kamala took another step forward, never breaking eye contact with the judge. Her words were calm, but each one carried a powerful message. "My dignity and my faith are not subject to your dictatorship. You cannot judge my faith, just as I have no right to judge your methods. But I have the right to stand by what I believe." No one expected the conflict to become this intense. The atmosphere in the courtroom was like a volcano, ready to erupt. And with every word she spoke, she convinced everyone in the room that not only her dignity, but the very essence of what was right, was at stake. The judge opened his mouth, but he could not utter a word. He stood in contemplation, realizing that he had lost this battle. The tension in the courtroom was palpable. Kamala stood with an expression that spoke of determination and deep conviction. She knew this moment would be a turning point. All eyes were on her, and although the judge tried to appear unwavering, he could feel his authority slowly beginning to fade. Kamala paused and looked at the judge, her voice cold but confident. "Your Honor, I can no longer allow you to disregard my beliefs and rights. This is not just about my cross. It is about our justice and how we should treat each other in court." The judge, feeling increasingly uncomfortable, tried to maintain his position. He crossed his arms and looked at her with a sneer. "And what do you propose?" "Well, Kamala, if you think I am breaking the law, let's see how this plays out." Kamala smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. She took a step forward, approaching the judge's central table where his paperwork lay, and picked it up. This was a strategy she had carefully considered. Everyone knew that while the judge held an important position, he sometimes allowed himself to rewrite decisions, evading responsibility for his actions. Kamala decided to use this. "We can set a precedent," she said, raising her gaze to the room again. "But this is not just about you. We can make you understand that your actions affect the justice system. I will refer this matter to the relevant authorities to examine your behavior as a judge and demand your dismissal for ethical violations." The room froze. Everyone was listening to her words, and some of the participants in the case sensed that this situation could have serious consequences for the judge. Kamala was speaking not only to win the case, but to question the entire process that the system led. The judge tried to silence her, but she was unshaken. "This decision is not only about your legal violation, it is also about the fact that we, as judges, must be examples of justice, not tools to uphold tyranny. You have violated not only ethical standards, but also the trust in the entire judiciary." The judge decided to respond, but his voice no longer sounded convincing. "You cannot accuse me without solid evidence. This is an unfounded accusation." Kamala gathered all her strength and continued, "I have every reason to do so. Your actions undermine faith in the independence of the judiciary. I will file an official complaint about your conduct and seek to make you answerable to those who oversee judicial ethics." The judge raised his hand, trying to maintain control, but at that moment it became clear that the fight was over for him. He realized that Kamala was not going to back down, and her actions could lead to serious consequences. The courtroom fell silent, and all present watched as the dramatic turn unfolded. Kamala had not only stood up against his decisions, she had questioned the very foundation of his power. "We will make your actions public," she concluded, "and we will do everything to ensure your behavior is assessed at the highest level." This moment became a turning point for the entire courtroom. Kamala knew that now she was not just a judge. She had become a symbol of the fight for justice in her profession, and her next steps would serve as an example for many. The judge, who just a few minutes ago had tried to maintain control of the situation, now appeared broken. Kamala addressed those present, leaving no doubt about her determination. "We must not remain idle when we witness injustice. Our goal is to protect everyone's rights, even when the system tries to silence them. I will appeal to higher authorities, and this judge will be punished for his violations." Her words hung in the air, and everyone in the room felt that something had changed. The judge tried to find support, but he understood that his position had been firmly undermined. Kamala was acting not only for her own case, but for those who helplessly faced similar situations. The courtroom gradually calmed, and after a few minutes of silence, the judge declared a recess. Kamala returned to her seat, feeling that victory was already within her grasp. She knew that there was still a long road ahead, but the first step toward change had already been taken. Kamala went to the higher authorities, filing an official complaint against the judge for ethical violations and noncompliance with standards. After an investigation and gathering of evidence, the judge was dismissed from his position. This case became an important precedent that inspired others to speak out against violations in the judicial system. Her determination and dedication to the cause became a model for others. Kamala continued to fight for justice, staying true to her convictions. And though she was just one person in the system, her struggle became a symbol of hope for those who felt like powerless victims of injustice.